The drama begins with our actress, Mimi, reminiscing about her school days, which she considers to be some of the best years of her life. She dreams of going back to those days of childhood, even if only for a moment, to relive the joy and innocence of that time. The story then takes us 10 years back to explore the beautiful life Mimi longs for, starting with her preparations to join the largest school in her city for the first time. Mimi, however, is not fond of all the preparations and wishes she could attend school without any fuss. Her father, on the other hand, decides to take her to a hairdresser for a fashionable haircut to help her fit in with her classmates. But Mimi protests, saying, "Why are you cutting off my long, beloved hair?" Through this, we learn that Mimi is a brave and strong-willed girl. Later, we see her standing up to a thief who has stolen someone's wallet, boldly retrieving it without hesitation. Despite having the option to call her father for help, she chooses to handle the situation on her own, saying, "Leave cases like this to me." Meanwhile, our actor, Roshi, watches the scene from a distance, deeply impressed by Mimi's courage. He thinks to himself, "This girl is extraordinary." Yet Mimi doesn't even notice him. Roshi wonders, "How could she not see me standing right here?" and convinces himself that maybe her eyesight is weak. On the day Mimi moves into her school dormitory, she notices that all the other girls have long hair. The short hair fashion her father insisted on doesn't exist at this school. Pretending not to care, she acts unbothered to avoid being teased. As she roams the school, exploring her new surroundings, she spots Roshi playing basketball, effortlessly leaping from long distances. She becomes captivated by his charm and whispers to herself, "Wow, amazing, he's so handsome and he's also a basketball star." She thinks to herself, this year might actually turn out to be a great one. Suddenly, she finds herself running after him to save a ball that was about to hit him. When he looks at her, he realizes she's the brave girl from earlier and tries to talk to her. However, she quickly retreats, unable to handle his overwhelming presence. Later, when they meet in class, Roshi attempts to strike up a conversation, but Mimi avoids him despite his efforts to ease the situation. Roshi and his friend Fawn are known as the two most intelligent students in the entire school, and Mimi is well aware of Roshi's reputation for being highly knowledgeable. She then observes Roshi and Fawn competing against each other in an academic challenge. Fawn believes he is smarter, and the competition gathers all their classmates who are eager to watch. Mimi can't stop herself from blurting out, "What's with these kids and their intelligence?" Her outspoken remarks catch everyone's attention, making her the center of focus. The competition ends in a draw, and Mimi later runs into Fa'an in class. He seizes the opportunity to sit next to her, asking, "Do you remember me?" Mimi responds, "You're Fa'an, the genius." This leaves Fa'an disheartened as he realizes she doesn't recall their past. It turns out they had met before, but she had forgotten. Shortly after, the teacher enters the class and asks everyone to introduce themselves. Roshi cheekily suggests that Mimi should go first. She hesitates but eventually steps forward, feeling anxious about speaking in front of the class. During the break, Mimi meets two girls, one known for her beauty, named Jamila, and the other, an adorably sweet girl. The three hit it off quickly. Later, during military training class, Mimi faints from heat exhaustion and is taken to the hospital. Fawn stays by her side, but when he steps out to get her food, Roshi arrives just in time to stop her from pulling out her IV drip and trying to leave. As he helps her, Mimi grows flustered and nervously drinks water, pretending everything is fine. Roshi is amused and secretly admires her strength, thinking she is truly remarkable. When Fawn returns, Mimi eats the food he brought and then insists they inform the doctor that she needs rest to avoid further training. She promises to repay their help someday, and they reluctantly agree to cover for her. That evening, she spends her time reading stories in her room, laughing and enjoying herself. Jamila visits her with food and care from her new friends. However, the next day she runs out of excuses and is forced to attend training. During the session, the trainer scolds her for not performing well the previous day. Roshi steps in and volunteers to train Mimi and her friend, showing them the proper techniques within just 2 minutes. Despite her initial doubts, Mimi continues with the training. Later, Fawn surprises her with her water bottle, and Mimi is shocked that he recognized it from just one glance. Fawn replies, "I have a good memory," and says, "If I see someone even once, I never forget them." Then we discover that they had met when they were younger, and he remembers her, but she doesn't remember him. She says to him, "Wow, you are genius. You don't forget anything." Fawn then thinks to himself, another opportunity will come to remind her. That evening, they all gather together, play games, and sing. During this time, Mimi sings a children's song called Namira about her little cat. Everyone is focused on the actress, which makes her annoyed. However, Rushi stands up and starts singing, and the entire group joins in singing the children's song. By the end of the day, their training session concludes, and they bid farewell to the coach. The next day, they return to school, where classes resume. During the morning exercise session, we see Jamila wearing tight shoes and running, despite an injured leg. She is nervous that the coach will yell at her if she stops. When the actress returns to class, she notices a marble that Fawn dropped and hands it back to him. Fawn asks her if she recognizes the marble, but the actress doesn't remember anything. He then brings her some milk they used to drink together as children. She says, "I love this milk," but still doesn't recall anything. Fawn realizes she doesn't remember their past, no matter how hard he tries to remind her. Determined, he decides to tell her the truth. He says, "A long time ago, we met on a ship. We played together, and when I was leaving, you gave me this marble and said we'd play again after we got off the ship." The actress responds, "That's a lovely story, but you should write it in a book. I'm sorry, but I can't believe that story." Fawn then tells her, "When I bring you a photo, you'll believe me." But the actress doesn't trust him and thinks he's making it up. This leaves Fawn feeling disheartened. In class, Mimi accidentally submits the wrong homework to the teacher, a math assignment instead of her actual work. When she looks back, she notices Roshi smirking and immediately suspects he played a prank on her. Outside, she confronts him but ends up tripping and falling in front of him. Embarrassed, she mutters, "Disaster strikes every time I see your face." She then asks if he was the one who hid her homework, trying to piece together what really happened. Then Roshi responds, "I'm not that unemployed to be doing all this." But when he sees Jamila, he says, "What if we all had lunch together, girls?" Jamila agrees, but Mimi warns her, saying, "Don't get too close to him, this one's a walking disaster," and commands him to keep his distance, declaring, "From now on, you'll be called a walking disaster." Roshi looks at himself and says, "Is it possible for a face this handsome to be called a disaster?" The next day, they were supposed to run laps around the field, but Mimi has a sore leg, and Jamila is dealing with stomach pain. Despite this, the trainer insists they continue. During the run, Roshi helps Mimi, while Fawn supports Jamila. Mimi feels forced to apologize to Roshi, admitting that if they hadn't been delayed while getting breakfast, the trainer wouldn't have been so harsh. Later, Mimi sneaks breakfast into the classroom, even though eating there is prohibited. Roshi notices her and sits beside her, saying, "This is how you get caught, and I wasn't even planning to hide it for you." At the same time, Fawn tries to help her conceal it before the teacher arrives. Mimi starts to see Roshi as a sneaky person, but loyal to his friend. Determined to get back at him, she decides she needs to become cunning as well. She shakes up a bottle of acidic soda, planning to make it spill all over him when he opens it. Approaching him, she says, "Take this drink as a peace offering. Let's turn over a new leaf and forget the past." Roshi, sensing her insincerity, replies, "You open it first." They argue back and forth about who should open it until another boy steps in to open it. The soda spills everywhere, exposing her plan. Roshi smirks and says, "I won't forget this." Mimi retorts, "From now on, you're in danger. Watch out for what I'll do next." Later, Fayan sits with Mimi to explain a question she didn't understand. Roshi shows up to annoy her but leaves shortly after, heading for a break. When Mimi returns, she finds her desk covered in trash and yells, "Who did this? Who ate on my desk?" She suspects Roshi, though he swears it wasn't him. Still, she doesn't believe him. Mimi and her friends form a group, vowing, "If anyone messes with one of us, they'll regret it." That afternoon, Mimi sees Roshi with another girl and tells her friends, "Let's follow him, he's probably up to something." When they approach, another boy stops Roshi and the girl, asking, "What's your relationship?" Mimi steps in, pretending to be Roshi's wife, dramatically saying, "I can't believe you'd betray me like this," and starts fake crying. Roshi, annoyed, says, "Stop with your acting. Your voice is too loud and we'll get caught." The boy, however, takes her words seriously, and Roshi and Mimi end up in a fake reconciliation moment, sharing a brief truce. Fawn, seeing this from a distance, is confused about what's happening. The teacher arrives, and Roshi grabs the actress's hand and they run off together. In that moment, she forgets the conflict between them and feels happy. When they reach the room, he sends her a message asking if she got into the room safely. At the same time, the woman in charge comes in and confiscates her phone after noticing she's distracted. Meanwhile, Roshi is waiting downstairs, unaware of what happened. He then sends a message to Jamila, asking her if Mimi comes to the room safely. Jamila misunderstands and thinks Roshi is interested in her. The next day, Mimi, upset about her confiscated phone, challenges Roshi and his friends to a writing contest. They agree, saying, "You're the ones who started this. Whatever happens is on you." Mimi feels pressured and ends up forgetting a question on the final exam, leading the teacher to scold her in front of the class. Roshi adds to her frustration, and Mimi realizes he's not as bad as she imagined, but still finds him annoying. Later, Roshi approaches her, apologizing and offering her a lucky charm his mother made. He tells her, "You'll become knowledgeable and lucky, just like her." Mimi hesitates but eventually accepts it, agreeing to start over. Unexpectedly, the class splits into two groups for a strange game. Mimi's team wins, but the opposing team refuses to accept the result, arguing, "How can someone like her lead a winning team? This must be redone." Mimi's friends step in saying, "Mimi could beat you 100 times over. If you're scared, leave." For the first time, Mimi feels supported by her friends, who encourage her and even create a study plan for her. They also print out her stories to keep her motivated. Throughout the day, Mimi stays in the classroom, studying. Fawn, sitting with her, looks at her with admiration, but Mimi is oblivious. Roshi, noticing the effort she's putting in, secretly buys her new books to help. When her friends see this, they warn her, saying, "Don't let him ruin all your hard work." Mimi returns the books to Roshi, pretending to be indifferent, while her friends urge her to stay away from him. To help her relax, Fawn organizes a film screening of her favorite movie during break, but Mimi continues studying instead. When Roshi asks why she isn't watching, she snaps, "What's it to you?" She immediately regrets her outburst, knowing he's not her enemy. The next day, Mimi runs into a girl from her old school who mocks her, saying, "Still a failure, Mimi? Did you manage to get good grades, or are you still the same loser?" Before Mimi can respond, Jamila steps in, defending her and yelling at the girl. Mimi told Jamila that she was often insulted in her previous school because of her low grades. Jamila reassures her, "You're working hard now and you'll achieve great results. No one will dare say anything." The girl, however, spreads Mimi's old nickname around the school, and when Mimi enters the class, everyone starts teasing her. This time, Roshi and Fawn stand up for her, demanding the boy leading the teasing apologize to Mimi in front of everyone. The boy refuses to apologize, saying, "There's nothing I'll apologize for." At that moment, Roshi grabs his head and forces him to bow, making him apologize against his will. Seeing this, Mimi says, "Calm down, Roshi and Fawn." Worried that the situation might escalate into a fight, she adds, "It's okay, I've already forgiven him." Later, Mimi sits alone, upset that she was given the nickname Mimi Jambari. Fawn approaches her and she explains the origin of the nickname. She shares that she used to attend boarding schools because her parents were always working, and her grandmother was too old to take care of her. Since she appeared to be a little girl with no guardian, others mocked her, and she became an easy target for bullying. This caused her to fall behind in her studies and have no friends. She asks Fawn, "Has anything changed after all this time?" Fawn reassures her, "Yes, a lot has changed. Now you have friends, you're in a class where you're liked, and you've started putting in effort and studying. Don't ever see yourself as a failure. No matter what happens, you're doing your best." Mimi later finds out that the teacher's birthday is approaching, so she brings a large board for the entire class to write messages of appreciation. She discovers a note written by Roshi, thanking the teachers for their hard work. She's moved by his gesture, and even sees him bringing the boy who insulted her earlier to apologize again. Mimi says, "If you want me to forgive you, bring all your friends to write a message for the teacher." The class writes a beautiful note for the teachers, and the teachers are told that Mimi organized it, making her a favorite among them. Roshi notices how beautiful her handwriting is and thinks she deserves to win the writing competition they had organized. Over time, Mimi and Roshi begin to develop feelings for each other and let go of their previous conflicts. By the weekend, most students head home except for Jamila, who says, My family works in another city, so it doesn't make a difference whether I stay here or go home. Mimi notices Jamila holding 2 tickets, hinting that she's hiding something. Meanwhile, Mimi agrees to let Roshi take her on his bike to the bus stop. Before they leave, they stop by the post office to submit her application for the writing contest. Roshi gently places his hand on her head and says, "If I'm by your side, luck is with you." But Mimi doesn't hear his words, as she's lost in his beautiful eyes. Roshi tells her, "I support you if you want to become a writer," and adds, "The important thing is that you believe in your talent." Mimi asks, "What do you want to become, Roshi?" He replies, "I don't know yet." Mimi says, "You're intelligent and have everything you need to succeed." Roshi smiles and says, "You're better than me because you already know what you want." He begins to compliment her, making Mimi shy. She pretends not to hear him and says, "It's so hot today," even though the weather isn't hot. Nervous, she waits anxiously for the bus so she can escape the overwhelming moment. That night, Roshi looks through Mimi's profile and notices how many of their traits are similar. He starts to see her as cute. When they return to school, they find out the exams are just around the corner. Fawn brings Mimi study materials and starts tutoring her. When Roshi learns about this, he gathers the rest of the group and joins them in the study session. Mimi's friends ask Fawn to teach all of them so they can pass the exams. Fawn provides special lessons to ensure their success. On the day of the exam, Fawn and his friend were cheating and tossing notes to each other. Unfortunately, one of the notes landed on Mimi's desk. The teacher saw it and assumed Mimi was cheating. He confiscated the note and took it to the office, accusing her of dishonesty. Mimi, confident in herself, said, "I studied and don't need to cheat. Let me prove it to you." She then worked on the exam in front of him, answering correctly and diligently. The teacher, impressed, handed her an even more challenging question to solve. At that moment, Fawn walked into the office and subtly guided her on how to approach the problem. The teacher smiled, appreciating how Fawn helped his classmates, and said, "I wasn't trying to accuse you, I just wanted to see how much you've learned." Returning to the classroom, Fawn insisted that the classmates who doubted Mimi apologize to her. The class realized Mimi didn't cheat and expressed their trust and support, which made Mimi happy and grateful. Soon after, they found out that their class had achieved the highest scores in the school, and Mimi's improvement stood out. Mimi thanked her friends, saying, "I wouldn't have reached this level without your help." With exams over, the focus shifted to sports. Their class participated in a basketball match against another class. Mimi rallied the girls to support their team, and they arrived at the game to cheer for Roshi. During the match, Mimi spotted the girl who used to bully her at her old school but brushed it off, thinking, "I won't waste my time on this anymore." Instead, she focused on encouraging her team. Unfortunately, Roshi got injured during the game. Mimi rushed to his side with first aid supplies and cleaned his wound. Roshi secretly wished he had gotten hurt sooner just to receive her care. Fawn, angered by how the other team treated Roshi, took off his uniform, put on his sports gear, and joined the game. In the end, their team won, and Roshi was happier about Mimi's concern for him than the victory. Mimi gave him colorful bandages and showed she cared. The next day, they decided to play a friendly match for the girls to watch. However, during the game, Fawn intentionally bumped into Roshi's shoulder, affecting his performance. Mimi intervened, accusing Fawn of doing it on purpose, which led to an argument. The match turned into a defense of Mimi as Roshi and Fawn clashed. Eventually, the game ended with a victory, and the group celebrated. While dancing, Mimi tripped and fell, and Roshi carried her to the hospital. The doctor advised her to rest in the classroom and avoid the court. Mimi, frustrated by the restriction, wanted to watch the game from the classroom. Roshi brought her something to view the match from afar, and while leaning to look, she accidentally touched his hand. She felt an unusual happiness and quickly pulled away, pretending to be annoyed. "Don't you have work to do?" she asked, but Roshi stayed, waiting for her to write an encouraging note on his hand before leaving. They exchanged shy glances, realizing their growing feelings for each other. At the game, Roshi kept looking up at Mimi, waving at her from the court. Jamila noticed this, and feeling jealous, tried to talk to him, but Roshi ignored her, focusing solely on Mimi. After the game, Roshi approached Mimi to share the news of their win and invite her to a celebration at his house. He joked, "I'm a poor guy who eats outside food," convincing her to join him for lunch. Later, she agrees and comes to his house to have lunch together. During this time, she shows off her cooking skills. At that moment, Rushi falls to the ground, and she realizes that he's actually a great cook and that he had lied to her to get her to come to his house. Rushi then says, "Your food is delicious. I've never had anything this tasty before." However, they're interrupted when her mother arrives to pick her up. Her mother greets Rushi before leaving. The next day, their friends plan to go out together, but Jamila decides to take Mimi with her first to go shopping. While they're shopping, Mimi tells Jamila, "I'm so happy to have a friend like you in my life who truly cares for me." However, at that moment, Mimi has no idea that Jamila is hiding a secret. Later, while Jamila waits for Mimi to grab her bag, it's revealed that a man has been following Jamila at the mall. She hides from him and only comes out once she's sure he's gone. Then she heads to the spot where Mimi and the rest of their friends are waiting. As soon as Rushi sees Mimi, he is mesmerized and he stood like a tree. She has completely changed her hairstyle, and everyone is amazed by how stunning she looks. Rushi waits for the perfect moment to tell her how beautiful she is, but his friends keep interrupting him, and he can't find the courage to say anything. During a hide-and-seek game, Roshi and Mimi ended up hiding together in a small car trunk, bringing them physically closer. Mimi became shy and tried to act composed, thinking, "It's normal, right? Just because his beautiful eyes are staring at me doesn't mean anything." Just then, Fayan showed up with a toy gun, aiming it at Mimi playfully. Roshi shielded her, taking the shot himself. A girl who liked Fawn then aimed the toy gun at Mimi, pretending to avenge Fawn. This playful rivalry began to spark jealousy in Fawn, who noticed the closeness between Roshi and Mimi. When they returned to the dorms, Roshi accompanied Mimi on the bus, ensuring she got home safely. During the ride, Mimi almost fell, but Roshi caught her, and they ended up sitting together. He played her a song, pretending she had fallen asleep, and whispered, "Your hair looks beautiful today." Mimi, pretending not to notice, slipped a medal she had bought for him into his bag, knowing he was awake and smiling. The next day, Mimi found out Fawn was unwell, but hiding it. She advised him to share his struggles with friends who could help him. Offering her support, she helped him collect books, despite Roshi's jealousy. Roshi tried to disrupt their moment, but eventually helped Mimi with her tasks. When a teacher asked Roshi to create a school advertisement, he insisted Mimi join the project. Jamila, still vying for Roshi's attention, volunteered as well. Later, when Roshi informed Mimi about the project, she stubbornly asked, "Who told you I wanted to join?" Despite her initial resistance, she grew excited about the idea. They argued briefly when she mentioned helping Fawn instead, and Roshi teasingly said, "Is he dying that you have to help him so much?" Their playful bickering escalated until the teacher almost reported them to their parents. They ran off to avoid trouble, but Mimi lost her shoe. Roshi picked it up, carried her on his back, and they ran off together. We can say it was one of the most beautiful times in Mimi's youth, despite the struggle of losing her shoe while running away from the teacher. Eventually, she managed to escape alongside Roshi. Later, she went to meet Fawn to help him, but she arrived late and worried he might be upset with her. Mimi apologized sincerely to avoid giving the impression that she didn't value commitments. The next day, to make up for it, she brought Fawn his favorite milk. Fawn smiled and said, "I'm not upset. Just knowing you're here to help and care for me is more than enough." The teacher then announced that any student who had a specific shoe should step forward. Surprisingly, the boy who used to bully Mimi claimed the shoe as his own, saying he found it by the river where he had gone to rescue Mimi. The teacher pretended to believe that a size 38 shoe would fit such a tall boy. Later, Mimi went to the library and saw Jamila struggling to reach a book on the top shelf. Mimi grabbed a ladder to help her, but as she was about to fall, Roshi appeared out of nowhere and caught her. At that moment, Fawn heard the commotion and rushed over to check on the situation. Both Roshi and Fawn scolded Mimi for being careless, while Jamila, who had been ignored, felt hurt and realized they always prioritized Mimi. One day, while rehearsing a play, Jamila saw Mimi and Roshi acting together and pretended to laugh it off, hiding her jealousy. Later, Fawn got stuck in a taxi on his way to the play's venue. Roshi biked over to pick him up, and they arrived just in time. As they waited outside, Roshi and Fayan noticed Mimi chatting with a boy. When they asked about him, Mimi said, "He's Nishu, my neighbor." Roshi calmly responded, "If he's Nishu, that's fine." The next day, Mimi overheard that the school had chosen Jamila to act alongside Roshi in an advertisement. Hurt but trying to hide her feelings, she ran out into the rain, followed by her friends, who didn't want to leave her alone. Roshi, angry about Mimi's reckless behavior, worried she might catch a cold, and gave her his jacket. Jamila, seeing this, felt invisible and wished she could take Mimi's place. Later, Roshi reassured Mimi, saying, "If the school didn't choose you, I would've. You're the best actress here. Don't let this upset you." Mimi felt encouraged by his words and started preparing passionately for her acting roles. Meanwhile, Jamila noticed that Roshi had given Mimi a tiara for her performance, which made her jealous. During filming, the director started favoring Mimi and even offered Roshi another role for the future. Jamila, overwhelmed by jealousy, broke a glass to get attention and injured herself. However, everyone downplayed the incident, telling her to simply put on a bandage. Fawn stayed with Mimi, while Roshi wanted to follow but was forced to stay for filming. Later, Mimi saw Roshi and Jamila on TV, with everyone praising Jamila's beauty. Feeling hurt, she went to fetch some water to clear her mind, but accidentally burned her hand with hot water. Roshi arrived, unaware she was still upset about the filming. Meanwhile, Mimi caught Jamila arguing with a man demanding money from her. When Mimi confronted her, Jamila lashed out, saying, "Stay out of things that don't concern you." She quickly apologized, blaming her anger. However, later, Jamila defaced Mimi's picture, pretending to be innocent when others found out. When the students discovered someone had tampered with Mimi's picture, they suspected the girl who used to bully her in her previous school. Jamila feigned shock, saying, "I can't believe someone would be this cruel." Mimi, unfazed, leaned on her supportive friends. Roshi played along by jokingly mimicking Jamila, which upset her further. Meanwhile, the class debated whether to pursue science or arts. Mimi confidently chose her path, and her writing impressed the teacher, who praised her, saying, "You remind me of my younger days." This boosted Mimi's confidence, and her class scored the highest in exams, becoming the top-performing Form 1 class in the school. Mimi asked Fawn for extra tutoring, and with his help, they won another academic competition. The next day, the students arrived at school with dyed red hair, turning the day into a celebration. Despite the initial disapproval of the teachers, they convinced them to let them enjoy 5 minutes of fun. Everyone wrote down their dreams. Roshi wrote, "Everything Mimi wants to achieve." Jamila wrote, "I want to be in the same class as Roshi next year." Fawn wished to stay close to his loving friends, while Mimi wished for everyone's dreams to come true. Later, Roshi surprised Mimi with a photo album titled Memories of Form 1, containing pictures of their journey. That evening, the group went to a playground together. Jamila tried to get Roshi's attention, but he stayed with Mimi. He thanked her, saying, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have dreamed of becoming an actor. You've inspired me to find a dream worth pursuing." Mimi, thrilled, shared that her writing competition entry had been accepted. Roshi encouraged her, saying, "I'm sure you'll win." On the bus ride home, Roshi called Mimi, asking her to think of him when writing her next play, and jokingly said, "Make me the lead actor in your story." Mimi blushed, wanting to say, "I wouldn't find anyone more handsome than you." But shyness stopped her. In a surprising turn of events, the director offered Roshi a role in a new school-themed film. Mimi accompanied him to the set to show her support, solidifying their growing bond. But when Roshi saw Mimi running after the cat, he wanted to drop everything he was doing and go to her. The director noticed this, and realizing how much Roshi cared for Mimi, told him, "Go ahead," allowing him to leave. Roshi approached Mimi and saw her playing with the cat. His face lit up with joy, clearly captivated by Mimi's beauty and charm. Meanwhile, Jamila was posting pictures on Instagram, pretending she was traveling and living a glamorous life, while in reality, she lived in a cramped 1-meter room with her strict father and brother. They believed a girl's role in life was solely in the kitchen, expecting her to always say, "I'm ready for anything." They controlled her life, taking her earnings simply because she was a girl. Her mother, powerless and timid, couldn't stand up to them. The design of Jamila's room resembled a small prison, and she only left the house to go to school. When Mimi was telling Roshi about Jamila's supposed trip, they coincidentally saw Jamila walking down the street, looking upset. Mimi immediately suspected that Jamila had lied about her trip and told Roshi, "There must be a reason she lied. Let's treat her kindly from now on and try to help her." The new school year began, and they moved on to Form 2. Mimi and Roshi arrived together on a single bike, drawing everyone's attention. Fawn and Jamila saw them and realized their chances were diminishing as most students joined the science stream, splitting them into different classes. Despite this, they agreed to stick together as friends. In the new class, no one was happier than Roshi, who finally managed to sit next to Mimi. Jamila, watching with envy, wished she could switch seats with Mimi. If she had the chance, she would have broken the table to make it happen. Fawn, meanwhile, grew frustrated when he saw Roshi sitting so close to Mimi. When Mimi asked for her notebook, Fawn refused to let Roshi pass it to her, saying, "I'll give it to her myself when she comes." Mimi, busy with her own plans, remembered her promise to support Jamila as she had vowed during the break. However, she began to notice that Jamila was subtly trying to distance herself from Mimi, despite pretending to be helpful. Mimi suggested, "They need someone for the school radio. Let's help her participate." Jamila, acting innocent and kind, agreed, but deep down she was only biding her time, planning to abandon her facade once her goals were achieved. The school decided to organize a dance party, bringing together the boys and girls. Jamila ended up dancing with Roshi because she knew the trainer who paired them together. Meanwhile, Fawn and Mimi danced together. During the event, Roshi was visibly uninterested in dancing with Jamila. Seizing the opportunity during a rotation, he switched partners with Fawn so he could dance with Mimi, leaving Jamila with Fawn. As the dance continued, it became evident that Roshi and Fawn were competing for Mimi's attention, while Jamila was being ignored. Frustrated, Jamila pretended to fall and called out for help, but no one paid attention to her. She left angrily while the others continued enjoying themselves. Later, Jamila confronted Mimi, asking, "What kind of relationship do you have with Roshi?" Mimi casually replied, "We're just friends." Jamila, taking advantage of the situation, asked Mimi to let her dance with Roshi. Mimi began to realize that Jamila didn't see Roshi as just a friend and wondered if she was jealous. Despite her feelings, Mimi approached Roshi in the office and said, "Let's meet on the dance floor so you can dance with Jamila." Roshi immediately understood that Mimi had been asked to relay the message. He told her, "Mimi, stop being so accommodating to everyone who asks for something. Not all your friends have your best interests at heart." Just as Mimi was about to respond, she received a notification about her play being accepted for publication. They had even sent her the first installment of payment, officially making her a writer. She was thrilled but kept the news to herself as she headed back to class. When she noticed Fawn was missing, she said, "This class feels empty without Fawn." Roshi, feeling jealous, began to suspect that Mimi and Fawn might be more than just friends. It became clear that both Roshi and Mimi were beginning to feel that their relationship was more than just friendship. Meanwhile, Jamila faced a crisis during a medical checkup when she couldn't afford to pay for the test. She feels embarrassed, and at the same time, Mimi ends up paying the money, even though she didn't want things to turn out that way. Later, Jamila calls her brother and asks him for money, otherwise their father will hit their mother. At that moment, Jamila doesn't know what else to do, so she is forced to steal money from the classroom funds that had been collected for a medical checkup. When the theft was discovered, the students quickly accused Mimi, saying, "She's the only one who has a lot of money." Mimi defended herself, saying, "How would you even know if I have money? The only people I told were Fawn, Roshi, and Jamila." Roshi began to suspect Jamila and told Mimi, "I think it's Jamila who spread the rumor." Jamila overheard this, panicked, and returned the money to its place. Later, the camera footage revealed that Jamila had been the last person to leave the classroom. When confronted, she admitted to seeing the money, but claimed she didn't take it. The money was eventually recovered, but Jamila felt ashamed and isolated herself during the break. Despite everything, Mimi chose to forgive her and sat with her during lunch, showing kindness, even though Roshi and Fawn were still suspicious of Jamila's actions. They all decided to move forward, pretending nothing had happened. One night, as Mimi and Roshi were walking in the school garden, Roshi teased, "I'm waiting for you to congratulate me because my birthday is on New Year's Day." Mimi promised she wouldn't forget. As she playfully ran around, her pants tore slightly. Roshi, noticing this, quickly gave her his pants to cover up, leading to an awkward moment of mutual embarrassment. The next day, the teacher questioned why they hadn't returned to the dorms on time, and they explained what had happened. Later, they saw Jamila collapse, and she was rushed to the hospital. It turned out she was suffering from malnutrition. The group decided to take care of her, with Mimi even bringing her food. However, Mimi was upset when she saw Roshi already caring for Jamila and cleaning the area around her. Rumors began to spread among the other girls about a possible relationship between Roshi and Jamila, which Mimi overheard and left angrily. Roshi, noticing her mood, told Jamila, "I need to explain this to Mimi so she doesn't misunderstand." Jamila, annoyed, said, "Just accept my New Year's gift and I won't bother you anymore." On New Year's Day, everyone exchanged cards. Mimi was waiting for someone to give her a card, but when Roshi handed her nothing, she said, "I thought you'd remember me." Roshi replied, "I did bring you a card, but I forgot it. Why would I forget you when I see you every day?" Mimi said, "I left my card on your desk before you arrived." Roshi immediately rushed to check, and Fawn and Jamila noticed this, feeling jealous of Mimi's care for Roshi. That evening, the group went to Roshi's house to celebrate his birthday. Jamila gave him a handmade hat as a gift, but when she saw that Mimi had brought the same gift, she hid hers. Mimi overheard Jamila reminding Roshi about their agreement, which made her feel left out. She excused herself to sit outside alone. Roshi, noticing her absence, reassured Jamila that her gift wasn't necessary and went to check on Mimi. Jamila followed Mimi outside and said, "I hope Roshi notices my feelings and wears the hat I gave him tomorrow." Mimi, feeling overwhelmed, left to find Fawn. Fawn found Mimi crying in the rain. He comforted her, telling her to let her emotions out. That was when Mimi realized she loved Roshi and saw him as more than a friend. Meanwhile, Roshi figured out Jamila's scheme, realizing she had given him the gift in front of Mimi to create misunderstandings. He told Jamila, "You've made a fool of yourself. Don't think Mimi is naive just because she hasn't confronted you yet." When Roshi went looking for Mimi, he found her crying with Fawn. Seeing this, Roshi felt hurt and walked away. Mimi, noticing him, looked at him angrily and decided to leave alone. Fawn followed her, while Roshi returned to the dorms, feeling dejected and falling sick that night. The next day in computer class, the tension between Mimi and Jamila was obvious. Roshi tried to apologize to Mimi, but she refused to listen, still hurt by everything that had happened. Mimi walked out of the classroom in tears, and Roshi followed her, asking, "What's wrong?" Mimi replied, "I lost a dear friend I thought cared about me deeply." Roshi tried to comfort her, taking her outside for dinner to help her relax. Over the meal, Mimi forgot all her anger and frustration. On the way back to the dorms, Roshi told her he had enrolled in an acting course and invited her to an upcoming performance, saying, "You have to come watch me." He also shared his plans to attend the city university and suggested they could go together. Mimi responded, "How could I even get the grades to get into that university?" Roshi smiled and said, "The exam isn't until tomorrow. I'll help you study until you get an A+. At that moment, Jamila saw them from a distance, quietly observing. The next day, Jamila saw a figurine that Fawn had made for Mimi. Curious, she picked it up, inscribed a romantic message on it, and placed it on Mimi's desk. The figurine now read, "Fawn and Mimi." Word quickly spread around the school that Fawn was in love with Mimi. Even the teachers commented, "The bright student Fawn seems to have abandoned his studies and is focusing on acting now." Fawn tried to explain to Mimi what had happened, but she reassured him, saying, "I know you didn't do it. Someone's just playing games with us." Fawn realized that Mimi would never see the love he had for her. Later, Mimi's father arrived at the school to take her home after hearing the rumors. Roshi and Fawn followed him to explain that Mimi was innocent. However, her father punished them by making them clean the house, blaming them for the gossip that had spread about his daughter. The next day, Jamila saw her brother at the school. He had stolen a wallet from one of his friends and demanded that Jamila pay the money back. When Jamila tried to stop him from running away, he threatened to hit her, but some boys, including Roshi, intervened and retrieved the wallet. Jamila injured her leg during the commotion, and Mimi approached her to say, "Fawn made that figurine for you, but someone else wrote the message to play a trick." Jamila subtly pinched Fawn, warning him not to deny it. A girl who liked Fawn confronted Mimi, saying, "There's no way Fawn would make a figurine for you. We all know Jamila isn't sincere, especially after what she did when giving Roshi a gift." As tensions rose, the boys diffused the situation by escorting the girl out of the room. Mimi began piecing everything together and suspected Jamila was behind it all. She confronted Jamila, saying, "You're a bad person with a dark heart. You were the one who stole the collected money and made it look like I did. You didn't even defend me." Jamila, furious, replied, "You know I love Roshi, yet you've been trying to get close to him. I thought you were my friend, but you don't see me that way." Later, Jamila sat next to Fawn in class, trying to assert her presence, even with Mimi nearby. It was revealed that Jamila had been hiding her real name, which she hated deeply. The girl who liked Fawn discovered this and spread it to everyone. Embarrassed, Jamila confronted the girl at the school's swimming pool. Their argument escalated, and the girl accidentally pushed Jamila into the pool. Jamila pretended she couldn't swim, using the situation to gain sympathy. Fawn, seeing this, became worried and rushed her to the hospital, angered by the girl's actions. However, another boy who had witnessed the incident told the girl, "Calm down, Jamila is manipulative. I saw her do this intentionally." Fawn, meanwhile, began considering leaving the school to continue his studies elsewhere. He prepared a gift for Mimi's birthday as a farewell gesture. On Mimi's birthday, Roshi called her to wish her first, but he suddenly ended the call when he learned his mother was seriously ill. Not wanting to worry him, his mother downplayed her condition. Roshi didn't tell Mimi the reason for the abrupt call, and instead focused on learning how to make her favorite tea and milk for her birthday. At school, Jamila noticed Fawn's gift for Mimi and, driven by jealousy, hid it in her bag. No one in class noticed until Fawn began searching for it. Unable to find it, he decided to leave to buy a replacement. That evening, Mimi accompanied Roshi to the cinema, where he surprised her with a video montage of their pictures set to music. He also gave her the tea and milk she loved. Mimi thought, "This is the best birthday of my life because Roshi was by my side." Meanwhile, Jamila's brother appeared at school, broke the gift she had prepared, and took her money, assuming it was something valuable. Frustrated with her life, Jamila hurt herself with the broken glass. She began treating the class assistant poorly, refusing to help her with tasks. The assistant later discovered that money had gone missing during her absence and suspected someone in the dormitory was stealing. Roshi encouraged Mimi to apply to the acting academy and brought her all the information she needed. However, the day was marred by the spreading rumors about thefts in the school. Jamila's past schemes, including the pool incident and the hidden gift, were exposed. Mimi, believing in giving people a chance, said, "There must be a reason she feels compelled to steal." Roshi, Fawn, and Mimi decided to visit Jamila at her home during the school break. They overheard shouting during a phone call and realized she was being mistreated by her family. They intervened, rescuing her from her abusive father and brother. Jamila, angry and humiliated, lashed out at Mimi, saying, "Stop pretending to be a good person." Fawn calmed her down, saying, "Mimi only does what her heart tells her is right. We're here to help you, not judge you." Back at school, Jamila apologized to Mimi, and life returned to normal. Jamila decided to stop playing the victim and focus on rebuilding her life. The teacher asked Mimi to write the year-end play, and Roshi was cast as the lead actor. To support her, Roshi created a calm environment and even sang to her while she wrote the script. On the day off, the four of them went out together to help Mimi find inspiration for her writing and the beautiful scenery. After wandering for a while, Mimi finally got an idea from something Roshi said. During that time, Jamila tried to get closer to Fawn after noticing how gentlemanly he was. Meanwhile, Roshi suddenly left after receiving news that his mother's condition had worsened. The next day, Roshi was absent from school, and Mimi began to worry. She, along with Jamila and Fawn, decided to visit his home. When they arrived, they saw Roshi returning home. He was happy to see them, but explained that his mother's tests weren't finished, and he needed to return to the hospital. Mimi insisted they enter his house and help out. Roshi, distracted by Mimi, asked Fawn to help her with casting actors for the play. Fawn, however, was struggling with his own dilemma, whether to accept a scholarship abroad or stay and support Mimi. He ultimately decided to postpone his decision and focus on helping Mimi. He asked Jamila to gather people for the auditions. Many showed up, and while assigning roles, a conflict broke out as some people were unhappy with their roles. Mimi stepped in, saying, "Stop acting like children, accept what you've been given," and successfully calmed the situation. Over the following days, Mimi continued working on the play while keeping an eye on Roshi, who was exhausted from frequent hospital visits. One day, as Roshi woke up to the sound of the piano, Mimi playfully said, "Ask for anything you want and I'll do it for you. Should I cook you something?" Roshi smiled and said, "I only want one thing, to rest my head on your shoulder." Mimi, feeling nervous yet touched, agreed. Roshi said it was all he needed to regain the strength to support his mother. They then began singing together, lightening the mood. The day of the play finally arrived, and everything was ready, but Jamila was late. Unable to wait any longer, they replaced her with another girl. The play was a success, and the audience loved it. However, Mimi noticed Jamila's absence and suspected her father and brother were involved. Determined to help, she gathered her friends and went to Jamila's house. There, they discovered the difficult life Jamila was living and tried to lift her spirits. Fawn even promised to help her with her education, which made Jamila happy. Meanwhile, Fawn was feeling conflicted about his future, but he noticed Roshi was in a worse state. When he asked Roshi what was wrong, Roshi revealed that his father planned to sell the family business to pay for his mother's treatment. Fawn advised him to tell Mimi about his struggles, saying, "She has the right to know. If she finds out you hid this from her, she'll be upset." However, Roshi hesitated, fearing that if he told Mimi, she would focus on him and neglect her studies and writing. Roshi found himself torn between his parents, unsure whether to prioritize his mother's care or support his father's decision. Fawn's father, upon learning about Roshi's situation, decided to offer help. Later, Roshi met Mimi outside her home in a distressed state, seeking encouragement. Mimi comforted him, trying to lift his spirits. She noticed his charming smile and suspected he was hiding something, but chose not to press him to avoid adding to his stress. Mimi then told Roshi she had decided to join the acting academy with him. Overjoyed, Roshi felt hopeful despite the challenges they faced. Mimi felt motivated, knowing she had become a recognized writer, and Roshi, a rising actor. Rumors about their relationship began spreading, and they became a couple everyone admired, a love story that Mimi had always dreamed of. Roshi, too, found himself wishing for the same things as Mimi and prayed that their relationship would grow stronger and last forever. On the other hand, Fawn realized that the time for his departure was approaching, and he didn't want to leave his friends behind. He gave Jamila a summary of the lessons to review and also provided Mimi with condensed notes and gifts. Mimi started feeling like Fawn was hiding something from her. Later, they all went out together, and Jamila noticed Roshi giving his jacket to Mimi. Jamila hid her own jacket in her bag, hoping Fawn would give his jacket to her instead, so she could also feel cared for. Together, they stood by the river, imagining themselves 10 years in the future as successful and happy individuals. Shortly afterward, Mimi saw Fawn sitting alone, deep in thought, and approached him to ask what he was thinking about. Fawn told her he couldn't predict what would happen or who he'd become in 10 years. Mimi reassured him, saying he'd become a brilliant mathematician and achieve great success, just as he had hoped. At that moment, Roshi arrived, and the three of them wished to have dinner together 10 years later. After Fawn left, Roshi whispered something in Mimi's ear, which we don't know, but he ended by saying, "We'll never be apart. We'll meet again in 10 years. Mimi was overjoyed at the thought that Roshi wanted to remain a part of her life. When Fawn and Roshi took Mimi home, Fawn hugged her and revealed that he would be traveling with his family for the entire school break, saying he would miss her deeply. Mimi replied, "You're only leaving for 2 months, and you're acting like you'll never return. I even thought you were saying goodbye forever because of how emotional you're being." As Fawn left, Roshi remarked, "I have a feeling he's hiding something from us, like he's going to Germany to finish high school." Fawn couldn't bring himself to tell the truth, and instead said it was a good opportunity for him. He also confessed to Roshi that he loved Mimi too, but since her heart was with Roshi, he said it was best for him to give up. Fawn asked Roshi to take care of Mimi when she realized he had left school at the start of the new year. When the break ended and Mimi returned to school, she noticed Roshi was also missing. No one knew where he was, and she became worried. She confronted Jamila, accusing her of knowing Fawn's plans to go to Germany, and said she'd never forgive her. At that moment, the girl who had feelings for Fawn intervened, yelling at Jamila and saying, "Stop blaming Mimi for everything. She didn't know Fawn was leaving, just like none of us did." She stormed off angrily, and then she told Mimi, "Jamila has never been a good friend to you." Determined to find Roshi, Mimi went to his house, only to discover it had been sold and all the belongings were gone. She broke into tears, clutching a picture of him. Later, she found out his mother was critically ill and that he was at the hospital. She rushed there and overheard the doctor saying to prepare for the worst. When Roshi saw Mimi, he embraced her silently. Mimi comforted him, saying, "You're not alone. Whatever happens, I'll always be by your side." When they visited his mother, she greeted Mimi warmly and said, "No worries, I will be fine. But I need a new heart, and we don't have a donor yet." Mimi sat beside Roshi, calming him and saying, "We would find someone soon. Everything will be okay." She embraced him and began crying, saying she had feared she'd never see him again when she found his house empty. Mimi went to her mother, expressing feelings of helplessness and saying she couldn't help Roshi. Her mother supported her, giving her the money she and her grandmother had saved and contacting a doctor she knew to help them find a donor. The next day, Mimi visited Roshi, excited to share the good news. She insisted he take the money and told him, "When you become famous, you can pay me back." Roshi reluctantly accepted, though he couldn't bring himself to tell her he might move to another city for his mother's treatment. Despite not knowing what the future held for him, or if he'd even finish school, Roshi spent the day with Mimi, drinking tea and milk she loved. He returned her to the school dorms, where she admitted she felt like she was living in a dream and didn't want to wake up. They walked hand in hand, and Mimi wished she could always stay close to him. When Mimi returned to her room, she saw that Roshi had secretly put the money back in her bag. She tried to call him, but he didn't answer. Instead, he sent her a message explaining that he and his mother were leaving for treatment and reminded her of their 10-year promise with Fawn. Mimi tried to run after him but collapsed in tears on the ground, whispering her goodbye. She returned to school, crying uncontrollably, while her friends tried to comfort her. Jamila, however, didn't bother to help, even though Mimi had always supported her. Fayan heard what happened from their friends and sent Mimi a letter from Germany, encouraging her to stay strong. He reminded her of their 10-year agreement and left his contact information so she could write to him. Mimi found strength in his words and focused on her studies to distract herself from missing Roshi. Eventually, she succeeded in her exams and got into her dream university. At university, she saw Jamila, who still held an unexplained grudge against her. However, her other friends were also there, which gave her some comfort. One day, at the river, Mimi started talking to herself, saying, "Roshi, if you're brave, show yourself. Otherwise, it will be a disaster if you truly want to leave my life as if we never met." Suddenly, Roshi appeared, wearing a beautiful jacket. He said, "I never left. I've always been by your side, protecting you." At that moment, Mimi woke up. It had all been a dream. Now, in 2025, she received a call from her producer, who told her that the film she had written with the lead character named Roshi was set to be shot in their hometown. Hearing the name Roshi, Mimi felt uneasy. When the producer asked if Roshi was her first love, she avoided the question and walked away. She then sees a crowd of people surrounding someone, but doesn't realize that he is Rushi. She takes a taxi, reflecting on how she succeeded in writing her incomplete love story and was finally able to create a beautiful film. Mimi then returns to her hometown to visit her family. Meanwhile, her school friends call her because 2 of them are getting married, and everyone is celebrating the occasion. Mimi shows up, hoping she might see Rushi there, even just once. However, Mimi gets upset by her friends' questions, as she still doesn't have a relationship with anyone, and she continues to wait for Rushi. However, Jamila arrived and teased her, saying, "After all this time, you're still waiting for him? Move on and live your life." However, Mimi bravely responded to Jamila, saying, "I am free to make my own decisions, and I don't need your advice, so stop interfering in my life." Shortly after, it was revealed that Jamila had been lying to everyone, pretending she was in a relationship with Fawn while claiming he was busy in Germany and planning to return soon. Jamila was startled when she saw Fawn making a surprise appearance at a cafe with his friends. Mimi initially thought it was Roshi, but she was overjoyed to see Fawn instead. Fawn quickly realized Jamila's lies and decided to play along, pretending he was there to surprise her. Jamila, unaware of his intentions, sat with him. Fawn then turned to Mimi and said, "I came back to fulfill our 10-year promise." Mimi replied, "I'm sorry for Roshi. He disappeared without a word. I wish I knew if he loved me or hated me, so I could move on." It was then revealed that Jamila and Fawn had been in a relationship 2 years earlier, but Fawn left her after catching her cheating with another man. Jamila tried to apologize and begged him for another chance, saying she regretted her actions. However, Fawn told her they were not compatible and that he didn't want to continue a relationship built on betrayal. Jamila bitterly retorted, "You still love Mimi, don't you?" Fawn couldn't deny it and remained silent, as he still had feelings for Mimi. Meanwhile, Mimi was frustrated with Roshi for breaking their promise and not showing up. At school, she wrote on the blackboard, "Starting today, I won't wait for Roshi anymore." Roshi, watching her from afar, became worried that she might forget him and tried to approach her, but he couldn't catch up. Mimi later told her friends that she was done waiting for Roshi, and they cheered her on, saying, "Finally, you're letting him go. Don't waste your life waiting." Roshi, determined to reconcile, went to Mimi's mother to find out where she was. He eventually found Mimi in a room with her friends, singing while tipsy. When Mimi saw him, she ran to him and exclaimed, "What a beautiful dream this is," and kissed him before he could respond. Fawn awkwardly left, saying, "I'll let you two talk." Roshi carried Mimi on his back as she giggled, thinking she was still dreaming. When Roshi told her, "This isn't a dream, I'm really here, and I'm not leaving again," Mimi began crying and yelled, "Where have you been all this time? I waited for you while everyone told me to move on, but I believed you'd come back." The next morning, Mimi woke up unsure if it had all been a dream. However, she saw flowers Roshi had left and remembered the previous night. She then saw him on TV, speaking about a film inspired by their love story. Roshi revealed that he had asked Mimi to write their story into a script, and he would play the lead role. Soon after, Mimi received a call informing her that Roshi was standing outside her house. She went out, only to see him bringing groceries for her mother. Frustrated, she stormed back inside. Roshi stood outside, apologizing and promising never to leave again. Though Mimi missed him deeply, she remained firm. Fawn later confronted Roshi, saying, "You left Mimi broken, and if she suffers because of you, I won't forgive you." The two waited outside Mimi's house, hoping for a chance to talk to her. The next day, Roshi followed Mimi everywhere, insisting they needed to meet to discuss work on the film script. Mimi reluctantly agreed, but kept their interactions strictly professional. Roshi tried to bring up their past, but she cut him off every time. As they left, it began to rain, and Mimi, scared of the rain due to a past trauma, asked Roshi to drive her home. Once there, she told him, "I hope we never meet again. If you have something to say, just send it on WhatsApp." Roshi pleaded for a second chance, but Mimi said, "I gave you 10 years, and you never even tried to explain why you left." Frustrated, she left him standing in the rain. The next day, she went to a cafe to write, only to notice Roshi watching her from afar. Her friends told her that Fa'an had broken up with Jamila because he was still in love with Mimi. Mimi confronted Jamila, saying, "If you truly love Fa'an, do something extraordinary to earn his forgiveness." Later, Mimi saw Roshi at the cafe and shouted, "I don't want to see you! Stop following me!" Just then, she received a call informing her that her father had been taken to the hospital. Roshi accompanied her and supported her family until her father was discharged. At the hospital, Mimi's father revealed that she had been writing every day and that they had reconciled long ago. He told Roshi, "My daughter is precious, but you've hurt her deeply." Roshi apologized to everyone and promised, "I will never hurt Mimi again. If she wants me out of her life, I'll leave to ensure she's not hurt further." Later, Mimi found herself alone, scared of the rain and crying, thinking she had lost Roshi again. But this time, Roshi returned and apologized for causing her trauma. He vowed to help her heal and asked for her forgiveness. Mimi, still angry, walked away, unwilling to appear weak. One day, Mimi overheard Roshi's friends discussing his plans to leave because he had given up on earning her forgiveness. Panicked, she rushed to his house and found photos he had taken of her during their university days, realizing he had been watching over her all along. Just as she was about to leave, Roshi collapsed from exhaustion. She stayed by his side, demanding answers. Roshi confessed that he had faced immense challenges, balancing his mother's illness, his father's financial demands, and his own struggles, which left him feeling helpless. He told her, "You were in one city while I was in another. I constantly failed auditions and lost opportunities in acting. My phone got lost and I couldn't contact you. I was in a terrible situation and didn't want you to pity or get angry at me." He continued, "One day, a producer came to my school and offered me a small role in a film. Slowly, I worked my way up and became a successful actor. Everything changed when I saw the story you wrote about our past. That's when I decided to play the lead role, but I was terrified of how you'd treat me when we met again." Mimi lightly hit Roshi after hearing his explanation and said, "You should have told me the truth from the start instead of facing all this alone." Roshi then confessed, "I love you. We've already lost so much time. We can't waste any more." Mimi forgave him after he opened up about everything. Roshi then carried her on his back, and they revisited all the places they used to go to as children. Shortly after the filming of the movie wrapped up, the producer, thrilled about the bond between Roshi and Mimi, said, "Don't forget, I was the one who witnessed the beginning of this beautiful relationship." Faon later visited Mimi to congratulate her and handed her a picture from the first time they met. He wished her a peaceful and happy life before gathering his belongings to return to Germany. As Faon packed, Jamila overheard and pleaded, "My brother is about to be released from prison. Please don't leave me, stay with me, or let me come with you. If he comes back, he won't leave me alone." Faon, overwhelmed by the situation, couldn't give her a definitive answer. Meanwhile, Roshi surprised Mimi by creating a wall filled with their pictures and gave her a bouquet of flowers. He said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Mimi, feeling a sense of peace whenever Roshi was around, finally felt at home. The next day, Roshi and Mimi went out to play together, but it started raining. Mimi, scared of the rain due to her past trauma, clung to Roshi. Roshi decided to help her overcome her fear and gently encouraged her to step into the rain. Little by little, she touched the rain and began to regain her confidence, eventually becoming her old self, someone who wasn't afraid of the rain. While they were enjoying their time together, their friend, who was about to get married, arrived after having a fight with his fiancée. They calmed him down until he eventually fell asleep. Mimi felt the day had been disrupted, but Roshi surprised her with a beautiful necklace. They promised that their love would last forever and nothing would separate them. Their friends also achieved happy lives, just as they had hoped. Even Jamila was given a second chance by Faon when he realized her feelings for him were genuine, despite his long-standing love for Mimi. In the end, Roshi and Mimi agreed on a new 10-year promise. While the details of their agreement remained unknown, Roshi promised her one thing: "I will keep my word and stay by your side for the rest of my life." Subscribe for more videos like this one, like the video, and tap the bell icon to get the updates.